So this is just example print of one of the Y bar brackets. So this part is this part right here. So it holds the bar in place for the Y-axis. And then it has a little spot here that you can mount a limit switch to. And I just have it hot glued. So basically you've got a motor that's attached to the wood there. If you can get under. It just basically is pulling it back and forth. It slides on those bearings and it just comes forward until it hits a limit switch. So once it zeroes out, then it knows where it's at and it can just offset from there. So here it's printing the first layer. So it did a loop around the perimeter first just to sort of get the nozzle primed. And now it's printing what they call a raft. It's just a good first layer that is well adhered to the bed. In this case I'm using blue painter's tape. Specifically I'm using Ace Hardware brand. For some reason I find that sticks a lot better than other brands. So it's almost finishing the raft, and once it does that, it's going to pick up the pace a bit. But basically the first layer is just slow and steady, makes it stick really well, and then it just builds upon that layer after layer. So now it's going to finish that over here. Let you see a little bit more. So this is the extruder. I have a fan on here to prevent the extruder from melting from all the heat coming up. I think I've gone through 3 or 4 of that yellow part because it just gets warped. So I added the fan there to keep it cool. Some people put a cooler on the hot end itself to dissipate the heat away from the unit. That adds a little bit more expense to add like a heat sink. I found this works just fine. So again, the first layer is a lot slower than the rest of the layers. If it goes too fast, it doesn't have enough time to stick. So now here it's going much faster. So this particular print, I've got it set to do 3 loops around the perimeter of the part, and then do a 30% infill. That's all configured through the Slicer software. And that's usually where you spend most of your time tweaking to get good looking parts. It's really important to have the belts tight. Otherwise that can cause gaps in the part. That nozzle is just an acorn nut actually that I get at Menards hardware store. And I just drill a little hole through the tip of it and then screw that onto some threaded rod that I drill out the center of to feed the plastic through. I have the layer height set to 0.25 millimeters. I like to print 2 at a time. Sometimes if you do just one part and it's not very big, the layer doesn't have enough time to cool before it tries to lay down the next layer, and you kind of get things mushing together. So I found that if you print like 2 parts, then it gives it a little bit more time to cool before it comes across and adds the next layer. The first 3 layers are also 100% infill. So there I had it set to not cross over existing parts, so that kind of helps keep the parts clean. So this is the second layer. I can show you the software here. So this is the print runner. So sometimes I like to just look at the layers before I print it, just to make sure that everything's okay. This monitors the temperature. And I can see this has an hour and a half to go. It gives you an idea of how long it takes. So the x-axis, and then the z-axis actually has two motors. One there, one on the other side. And then those are just coupled to some threaded rod, which forces the x-axis to go higher. That whole X carriage just goes up. It has smooth rod as the guide to keep it straight up and down, and then the threaded rod is just what's forcing it up and down. There's just a nut. You really can't see it in there, but there's a nut in there, so that stays in place and just pushes it up. I've got this piece on here. This doesn't come with the kit, but that's a good, like, kind of first print kind of thing. It's just a little case with some cotton stuffed in there to help clean the plastic before it goes in. That's pretty much it. I haven't really come up with a good way to route the wires yet. I just have them taped down so nothing gets hung up on anything. But these boards, this one won't be quite so thick. It'll be the same as this board here. And then I think this one will be the same length as this one. It has just enough clearance so that it doesn't hit this motor. So it doesn't really matter how long it is. There is some advantage to having not quite so much material because it has more momentum. So the more momentum it has, the slower you have to print. Otherwise, you know, it gets moving back and forth, isolating so fast that the stepper motor can lose sync. We might be able to make this a little bit wider opening so that we can get a little bit more. I think right now I can only print to here on this side and here on this side. So in the real build, I think we want to make the X a little bit wider to get the full use out of this mirror. And I think that's just a matter of making these rods a little bit wider, longer, and then making, yeah, really that's it. Oh, making sure that this comes out a little bit more then, so that we have room to mount these wider. And then we'll also get a little bit more, this base a little bit longer so that we can catch this edge here too. So this mirror is just a mirror that I get at the dollar store. Makes a pretty good base. Sometimes I end up cracking them because my parts stick so well to this blue painter's tape that it can be hard to force that part off. I usually use a scraper that I got from my wife for her crafts, so I scrape that up. Most times it damages the painter's tape and I have to put a new layer on. The scraper does not come with the kit. I've seen other people just use a knife. You can make it so it doesn't stick so much if you start your first layer just a little bit higher. So that's sort of the tweaking. Okay, that's all for now.